Happy Monday, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we're going to take those sugarcane farms I did last week and automate them even further. So we do now, because of 121, we do now have the crafter, which is like an auto crafting block if you are unfamiliar. Anyway, I've never really used it for anything, so we're actually going to change that today. So here's the recipe, which actually is kind of steep, honestly. That's a pretty hefty. And look at that. The merchant is stealing my boat. What a turd. Anyway. Okay, so coming up here to do this, got to make sure the minecarts are stopped on this so that I can remove these, replace them. We're kind of reshifting the flow of these farms to ensure that it's going to function correctly. And like I mentioned before, I've not done much with the crafter. So hopefully this is not going to be difficult to follow if it's something you're interested in trying yourself. I'm moving this just to, like I mentioned before, just so I can get the flow a little bit different, to have both sugarcane farms feeding into the crafters for one central chest that's going to have all the paper. So I will say the crafter is not, I wouldn't call it a hard item to get used to, but it's not super intuitive right out of the gate. It's definitely something you need to play around with. The more you play around with it, the more it's going to make sense, because right out of the gate, it's kind of if you're not sure what you're doing with it and you're just trying to use it like a crafting table, it's going to frustrate you because it doesn't flow the same way. So yeah, best advice, just play around with it. Try to understand how it functions by getting your hands dirty with it. So anyway, I will say that this flow, I did discover a way to streamline it a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that. Now these blocks, I do want to disengage those bottom 6 blocks, because whatever you want the crafter to make, you have to activate or have the slots activated for where the items need to be. So in short, like in a nutshell, whatever you want the crafter to make, the recipe has to look the same. Like the crafter has to be loaded the same way the recipe shows up on a crafter or crafting table. So in the example of paper, on the crafting table, there's 3 sugarcane across the top line, the top 3 slots, and that'll give you paper. So that's how you have to have it put into the crafter. One thing that I did find out with if you're using the crafter to make items from one singular resource, so sugarcane in this case, it does distribute the items evenly across each open slot. So that does make it quite a bit easier for this. It doesn't dump all of one resource into the top, into the first slot until it's a full stack and then go to the next one. It does not do that way, and which I thought was actually very helpful. And I'm glad that it's set up that way, because it makes it way easier to use. So yeah. And I do want to take a second to apologize. It was a very busy week for me this week. It was a very, very busy weekend. Ended up cleaning the carpets at the house, so that took a lot of time on Saturday. So I'm recording this voiceover in my car on my lunch break on Monday. So I apologize for the delayed post, for all of that. If the sound quality is a little bit different, my bad. I sincerely apologize for that. And I hope y'all can look past it and enjoy the content for what it is. Speaking of, if you enjoy the content, and if you're watching, if you have questions or want to interact or whatever, I absolutely love to engage with anybody watching my content. So any posts, any comments or questions, I will respond to at one point or another. I really enjoy doing Q&A videos, so if there are comments or questions that I maybe don't respond to right away or whatever, I will get to it eventually, I promise. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I did find ways to improve the setup. Shifting that chest forward one block was definitely the better way to do it. Also, in regards to what I was saying a little bit ago with interacting and all that, for my YouTube watchers, I would greatly appreciate any likes, subscribe, and all of that. So if you enjoy the content you're seeing from me, please like, subscribe, and share the YouTube video to other people that you know that might enjoy it. And to my TikTok watchers, I would appreciate any additional follows. That means a lot to me, guys, and I hope that this content is as fun for you all to engage with as it is for me to make. Okay, so the one problem I noticed right away when I activated the crafters, it spat the item out past the hopper that it's supposed to drop into. So I'm gonna mess around a little bit with a fix for that. I think I'm gonna have 2 hoppers in front of the crafter, just so that way if it just drops out or if it spits it out a little bit further, it'll still pick it up. But yeah, I'm gonna play around with this a little bit and see what other kind of solutions that there might be. So bear with me on that. All right, so gonna try this. It's still shooting out past. Okay. Yeah, almost every time. Okay, so we're gonna address this. We're gonna get that fixed. Some of the paper did go in, which is nice to know. Okay. Here's a possible solution. I'm gonna put hopper here. Of course, I'll have to grab the blocks when they fall, but anyhow, I do hear often of either Mojang or other Minecrafters, whoever, people talk a lot about parity between the Java and Bedrock versions, which I think is kind of interesting because they're the coding or whatever, because the 2 different systems works so differently that there are some elements of the 2 versions of the game that will never be able to work together the same. Bedrock and Java redstone mechanics are very different. If you were not aware of that, if you're playing on Bedrock, you can't watch a Java redstone tutorial because it's not going to function the same way. And vice versa. If you're playing on Java, you can't watch a Bedrock redstone tutorial, and because it's probably not going to work for you. And I find that to be discouraging, but also frustrating. And that's not a mechanic that is easily fixable, because they're either going to have to find an entirely new way to make all redstone work for both platforms, or they're going to have to entirely change the way it functions from one platform to the other. And I don't think either one is necessarily a great solution. So we may be doomed to having 2 separate versions of the game perpetually. Who knows? So if you were watching just then, you saw the adjustments that I made to this, and I'm changing up the redstone here just to make it so much simpler. It's much less involved. There's a lot less materials needed for it this way. So, or a lot less redstone dust needed, we'll say. I think that's probably the better way to say it. This does actually make the interaction a lot simpler. It's much more straightforward. You don't have to worry about putting the redstone over the hoppers. But yeah, so now that I've done that, it does actually spit the paper out into the hoppers, which goes in the chest. This works better. And hopefully you all enjoyed that. We'll see you on Friday. Have a good week, guys.